Hello, my fellow project managers in the making, project managers who are thinking of taking the professional exam called the PMP exam. Well, I call this breaking into project management and the PMP exam. I hope you're doing awesome today. We're going to take the next quarter of an hour or less to talk about the PMP exam. I know lots of you are thinking about taking this test because as you look into the employment space, you realize that the PMP exam is in high demand. In fact, there's almost no way around it. My name's Phil. I've been a project manager now for, well, don't let me date myself. Let me say for a long time. How about that? I've been managing all sorts of projects, but I think my resume kind of gives it away. Taking a look at the screen, you can see I've been doing this for at least 2 decades now, worked in various companies, trained many different organizations and entities across the world. And my background, primarily engineering, but I have worked for all sorts of companies, healthcare, gaming, training, multimedia, you name it. So I've been doing this for a while. I got certified as a project management professional in 2005. And since I got certified, I've been helping lots of people pass the PMP exam. Many of the organizations you see on the screen may recognize them. Top firms across the world are interested in this PMP exam. And the question is why? Well, let's talk about who the PMI is. The PMI is the leading global association for project management. They were founded in 1969. They've been around for a long time. You can call them the big kahuna. So as far as project management is concerned and professional project management exams, the PMI pretty much put this on the map. So they are a force to be reckoned with. Whether you like it or not, the PMI has been very instrumental in putting project management on the map. The PMP exam is perhaps the most widely known project management certification in the world. And back in 1984, you can see we had about 40 people. But at the time I put this presentation together in 2020, get this, 1 million people were certified, over 1 million. And that's why I tell anyone who is looking at getting into project management, don't waste your time doing non-productive stuff. Look for a PMI certification, such as the entry-level certification, like the CAPM, Certified Associate in Project Management. Go for it. It'll help you. It'll help you get your foot in the door, and that will be the very beginning. If you're looking at truly getting into project management, you don't have any project management experience on paper, get CAPM certified and begin to work your way up. In addition to getting CAPM certified, learn project management software. This can get you into organizations where you can grow. And I'm telling you, not what I think will work, but what I know works because I did it myself. The 2 big steps I took was 1, learning Microsoft Project, and 2, believing that I could use Microsoft Project in a real world scenario. Now, even though I had the degrees and all that, that's not what got me in the door, my friends. It's the what can you do clause. So if you can do stuff with project management software, and I hate to go through the laundry list, but you know, you've heard these, you've heard Microsoft Project, you've heard of Jira, you've heard of version 1, you've heard of PlanView, ClearView, what have you, all those, but you got to look for the top ones. And honestly, Microsoft Project was one of the top ones. When the opportunity came calling, I was hungry to get into a firm that needed real project management and where I could learn. And that is where I found my mentor, Mary, who helped me find the trajectory to getting certified. So if you take a look at this number on the screen, I was one of these numbers in 2005, round about here, when it started hitting the 200 mark. And that's when I got certified, and the rest is history. Worked for many, many firms. Top firms like Honeywell, Motorola, US Airways, General Dynamics, US Airways now American, and many more. But it started with me being able to get stuff done, do something in the world of scheduling. One of the companies I worked for demanded a schedule with 3,000 lines long to be maintained. Another company requested a schedule of 20,000 lines long to be maintained. So it's all about what you can do, my friends. You got to be able to do stuff, and then companies start looking at you. And then from being able to do project coordinator work, you then move into real project management, heavy lifting type work. Now, my career was kind of complicated in that I had actually started managing projects and operations. I just didn't know what they were called. I didn't know the formal name for them until I got into the world of the PMI. That is why I encourage you to get into the world of the PMI, okay? So knowing who the PMI is, go into their website, go into the part of their website where you can sign up for the CAPM exam. And honestly, I do not work for PMI, so don't even think for a minute that I'm trying to sell you any of their products. No, I'm not. But I'm trying to tell you what will work for you, what will help you, all right? So go to pmi.org, look for the Certified Associate in Project Management exam, right? Study for it. You got to study for it, take it, and begin to commit yourself to project management. That's how to get more and more into it. And at the same time, don't forget. Now, I want to show you a few pieces of information that are going to help you in this journey as you try to get more project management. And I got to say it many times because I know you may not believe it. I do not work for these people. I don't. But I know that what they have can help you. And why don't you challenge yourself by taking a free course with them? It's called the Kickoff, kickoff.pmi.org. Why don't you go on down there? They've got a free course. Begin to immerse yourself into this world of project management, just learning. Yes, ad hoc. You met this crazy guy on YouTube that shoved you into a class without you planning for it. Do it. It's called Kickoff, kickoff.pmi.org. You got to register and so on, but it's a free course. You know, who gives up on a free course from the top project management organization in the world? Why don't you do that? Okay. And then in addition to that, I want you to go to PMI's actual site. Let me show you that right now. All right, if you go to PMI site, go on down to certifications, certification types, and check out the Certified Associate in Project Management right there. That's the one I want you to begin working on. Honestly, there's hardly any way for people that are not able to show prowess in project management to get into the workspace of project management. All right, so check this one out, right? CAPM, I'm going to copy the link and I am going to put it in the chat. Those of you on YouTube that may be watching right now, I really want you to take advantage of what I'm telling you and get plugged into the world of project management. There you go. All right. Now, for those of you that have been at this for a while and you feel, yeah, I know about the Certified Associate for Project Management. It's not bad, but I want to go for PMP. Yeah, then do it. Go for PMP. Click the button, start your application, go for it. Okay. Now, regarding the kickoff I was telling you about for the free training from PMI, let's click on learning and events and what's new and scroll all the way down. And you're going to see kickoff right there at the bottom. Kickoff is a free 45-minute learning tool that guides you through project management basics so you can effectively launch your project from start to finish. Honestly, it will be a nice adventure. There it is, you know, fun graphics, something looking like Sasquatch out there, greeny looking thing from the bushes. There you go. It looks like fun. Click on it, get Kickoff, it's free. Watch that, okay? And when you get done watching that, go for CAPM. All right, so the rest of today, really quick, I'm gonna show you what exactly this PMP thing is all about, okay? Why should you go for PMP? I've already shown you that it has grown in leaps and bounds and there are over 1 million people who are certified. It's a good club to join, do it. Okay, now the PMP exam is based on a number of subject matter, but the chief of which is the PMBOK guide, Project Management Body of Knowledge Guide. That is a 756-page book, which is bound to change in the near future, but it's a really huge book and it contains good project management practices. And a lot of the exam is based on that, but it's also based on other texts, so many pieces that I cannot go into each one, but I want to give you the top of the waves to know what exactly this exam is about. The exam is broken down as follows. You've got the people domain, which is all about human interactions in project management. It also covers the human interaction from an agile perspective or from a predictive perspective, and also from hybrid. Now, if you don't know what these are, don't worry, you'll get to learn them quickly enough. Regarding the process piece, this covers project management processes, tools, techniques, and methods. It might sound nebulous at first, but trust me, as you get into it, it will make a whole lot of sense. I could explain this to a 9-year-old, they would understand what I'm saying. And the business environment, this covers business strategies relating to projects. Again, from an agile perspective, doing things in an agile fashion, or predictive, fully plan driven, or hybrid. The exam is broken down into these chunks, as you can see, and within these pieces of people, process, business, we have agile and predictive. All right, so that's the score for the exam. That's how it's broken out to get to 100%. Okay, don't forget the two broad categories, agile and hybrid, and the other piece, predictive. All right, now with that said, remember, it's a 50-50, so they say, on the exam. So you need to be aware of agile and hybrid methods. You also need to be aware of predictive methods. The question is generally, okay, I'm coming into this project management thing for the first time, got no clue what this thing is all about. Break it down for me. Okay, well, let's break project management down. What exactly is project management? In order to answer that question about what project management is, I will need to put you through an extremely rapid course, which I call Smart Project Management. I'm going to cover it very quickly for you today, just to get you a little bit immersed into this world of project management. You know, whenever people hear about project management, they ask, what industry? I say every industry. It's universal, right? And I call this Smart Project Management. So the question is typically, Phil, what is project management? Well, project management is the application of knowledge and skills, tools and techniques to a project. Think about it like this. It's applying everything that you have to a project to get stuff done. But someone says, Phil, I don't know what a project is. Okay, a project is a temporary endeavor with a beginning and an end, temporary endeavor that we undertake to achieve a result. And project management is applying knowledge and skills to the project to get that result. So for a short period of time or long period of time, but it has a start and an end, whether your project is 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, doesn't matter. You're applying the same knowledge and skills and tools and techniques to get the project done. And projects are authorized for a number of reasons. It could be for market demand, organizational need, a customer request, a technological advance, a legal requirement, or a social need. But whatever the case, projects are run to deliver results. So when you get to that point where you now understand what a project is and why projects are run, you begin to learn how projects are tackled. And projects are tackled with this approach. Either you are extremely agile in your thinking, that is, as the project is happening, stuff is changing. It's almost like thinking on your feet. Or you plan everything that is going to be done, or as much as possible in advance, which is more predictive. So today I'm going to tackle more of the predictive stuff. Maybe another day we'll talk about the agile piece. But we're talking about the predictive piece today, because that's the piece, believe it or not, a lot of people struggle with. So the summary is this. If you are carrying out a temporary endeavor, there should first of all be authorization. We call that initiating the project. So if you're authorized to carry out a piece of work, then you should plan it. We call that planning the project. Okay, and if you've planned the project, then you should execute on the work. We call it execute the project. As you're executing the work, you should also be checking to make sure things are going according to plan. We call it monitoring and controlling. And at the end of the day, when you get to the end of the project, you should close it. Close the project and move on to the next project. That's how it should be, right? Now, in addition to this breakdown of looking at a project in these groups, we call them process groups, you can look at project management broken down in areas of knowledge. The first one is integration. That's the overall coordination of project work. Whatever you're doing that involves multiple parts, moving parts, you got to coordinate all of them, integrate them. We call that integration management. You also need to scope out the project with a telescope, be able to see the full scope of what is needed. You need to schedule whatever is scoped out. You need to cost it. You need to think about quality, how you're going to make sure that your product is fit for use. You need to think about the humans who will be working, the team members, also the material and equipment. We call that resource management. You also need to consider communicating with those people on the project, stakeholders, team members. You also need to think about uncertainty, risk that could affect the project. You also need to think about what you need to procure from outside through contracts and stuff like that. And lastly, stakeholder management. You got to think about those people who the project could be, who the project could affect, or who could be affected by the project. Okay. And that's pretty much how we think about project management in those slices. We can slice by process group, or we can slice by knowledge area. And let me introduce you to page 25 in the PMBOK guide, which a lot of you who are getting ready for the exam know. I would say, know what this means, know what all the different tiny little pieces are, the different processes, and it's going to help you as you study for the exam. So really quick, in the next few minutes, I'll show you what every single one of these means. And we're going to be covering the information going down like that in columns, from initiating, planning, executing, and so on. But bear in mind that in real project management space, things may not happen exactly like 1, then 2, then 3, then 4. No, you could be all over the place. You could have feedback loops, just join in the project in ways that you didn't even imagine. So whenever you see something like this, don't always think that it happens linearly. It does not. And your exam will test you on that. Okay. So let's very quickly go through the processes, okay, at a really high level and very quickly. All right. So the first one we often talk about is developing the project charter, which is authorization for the project. The project should be authorized. The next one we talk about is identifying stakeholders. In addition to authorizing your project, you should pay close attention to who your project could affect and who could be affected by the project. That takes us into planning. In planning the project, one of the first things you want to ask is, how are we going to control changes to this project? How are we going to manage change? So you think about a process that we call develop project management plan. And this is where you develop a plan for the entire project as far as change management, as far as configuration management, which really deals more with versioning and drawings and things like that. But to put a picture behind it, you're really thinking about all of these moving parts from every knowledge area's perspective. You're putting all of this together into one cohesive whole to get a project management plan. And that's really the summary of what we do in planning. We put together this big master plan that is used to govern and manage the entire project. But going into the smaller details of what happens within planning, your skeletal project management plan is just the beginning. Now you need to begin filling it up with details. And the details come from, 1, planning how to manage scope and how to manage requirements. That is one thing that you should add to your project management plan. Something else that will eventually lead to your project management plan robustness is understanding the requirements. So while the requirements are not part of the project management plan, they help us to plan. And that's why in collect requirements, we come out with a requirements traceability matrix or a set of requirements that can help us understand what exactly the project is about. And that takes us to the definition of scope. We call it defined scope. So again, we create a document which will in some way be included as part of our scope baseline. But this document here called the project scope statement, it lists out what is included in the project and what is excluded based on the requirements that we just looked at. We call it a project scope statement. And that leads us to the next process, which is create WBS, create work breakdown structure. And the work breakdown structure is a hierarchical decomposition of the project. But if I showed you one, it would make sense. So here's a WBS for building a house. And this WBS, it helps us break down the work into more understandable pieces. And once we have a better understanding of what needs to be achieved, then we can move into scheduling and planning how to develop the schedule based on what we know about the scope. And from there, we can begin to define the activities. We develop a list of activities. We sequence them and put them in order. We estimate the durations for the project. And by the time you're done, you pretty much have a schedule. We call that developed schedule. And that is what comes next in planning. And still moving down in planning, just remember that not everything happens in quick succession. We also have cost management. And in cost management, the first thing we do, like we do for many other knowledge areas, is we plan how are we going to manage cost. So we plan how to manage cost, and then we begin to estimate the cost for each scheduled activity. We determine the budget for the project by rolling up those costs for each scheduled activity, and we aggregate that and we have the budget. We call it determined budget. And it's the budget for all the resources used on the project. The next thing we talk about in project management is plan quality management. And this is where we plan how to meet those quality standards that may exist, how to identify those quality standards. So we identify these standards and we decide how we're going to meet them. We call that plan quality management. And that takes us to our next process, which is in resource management. This is called plan resource management. And this is where we're planning how to acquire, develop, and manage the team. I hope it sounds easy enough, because the whole idea is to just give you this very quick overview. And if you can relate to what I'm saying, then there is hope for you being able to master the intricacies of the PMBOK guide, right? So you plan, how are we going to acquire, develop, and manage the project team? How are we going to acquire resources of a physical nature? And then you estimate how many resources, how many, how much, be they human, equipment, material, supplies. We have some tools and techniques and approaches that we use. One of the very popular ones is the RACI chart, which is a type of RAM. And I'm showing you a RAM on the screen to put a face to a name. It's called a responsibility assignment matrix. And the RACI chart is a type of RAM. These are some of the things you'd learn, when you decide to move forward towards PMP. The next thing we think about is communications management plan. In this process known as plan communications management, we develop a plan for how to communicate across the project. And then we move into the area of risk. Again, we plan, how are we going to manage risk? We come up with a risk management plan. What is a risk? It's uncertainty that can impact a project. Now, we all manage risk in our day-to-day lives, but the way we manage risk is different. We manage risk a lot of times in an ad hoc fashion, or we might manage risk based on experience we've had in the past. We may not develop a plan for it, but we sure do it. So it's an easy concept to understand. We identify risks. You're driving along the freeway. You see a potential for risk to happen. You identify risks. You see someone speeding like a maniac. You just identified a risk. What are you going to do? You're going to move out of the way, all right? You carry out a plan immediately, a risk response plan, you see. But we go through those motions every day. We plan how to manage risks. We identify the risk. You tell your kids, if someone knocks on the door, don't answer. Well, that is identifying risk and also recommending a risk response plan right there. So we do these things implicitly in our daily lives, right? We perform a qualitative risk analysis. What is the likelihood and what is the impact? Well, the likelihood of talking to a stranger, a bad stranger, you explain that to your kids. So we already have some ideas of what a negative risk is, but just be aware that this also addresses positive risks or opportunities. And again, it's implicitly built in. If you do your chores, it's an opportunity for a reward right from the get-go, right? This risk reward, it's there in our psyche. It's there. We're wired to understand risk. We also understand the quantitative effect of a risk happening, maybe from a dollar standpoint. We might subliminally do it. What happens if we miss that milestone? So you're doing these things all throughout life. You just don't call them these specific names. And then we plan risk responses. What will I do in the event of? Like one day I was in a dark alley and I saw this individual with a huge submachine gun. What did I do? My risk response had obviously been planned because I executed it flawlessly and it worked. That's why I'm here today. I'm telling you, a lot of these things PMI are showing us, they are business as usual, life as usual. They're not far-fetched. And that is why I train and coach companies and individuals about them, because I truly believe it helps put structure and order behind how we do stuff. It helps us to be better. Plan procurement management is the next one. This is where we're planning how to manage procurements on the project. We come up with a procurement management plan. I know many of you don't go this far, but you do contracts. This is not rocket science. It's stuff you do. Last but not least, in planning, we have planned stakeholder engagement. And here we are planning how to keep stakeholders engaged. How will you keep your stakeholders engaged on the project? Get together with your team members, put together a stakeholder engagement plan, carry it out. It's that simple. All right, now we're moving into the executing process group. The first thing we talk about is directing and managing work on the project. That's a no-brainer. And then we talk about managing project knowledge, which is pretty much learning from your failures on the project. And at the same time, ensuring that any lessons that are learned are used. Any knowledge that is gained on a project is used in the firm, not just on the project, but in the firm. So it's a good practice, not just getting lessons, but actually using lessons, sharing lessons, using lessons. Then we talk about managing quality. Think about it. Do you want to go to the oven and bring out a burnt cake, or do you want to make sure that while the cake is in the oven, you're checking up on it? You're checking the process. Or do you want to get a cake at the end of the project and you taste it and it's like, I don't know, sawdust? Or do you want to make sure that while you are mixing that cake mix, it's the right proportion of ingredients, of course. So you want to check the process. Manage quality is checking the process. It's that simple. The next one is acquire resources, and this is where you're acquiring the human equipment, material, supplies, and facilities, team members, and so on the project. And then we develop the team. This is a very important one, which a lot of companies forget. A lot of companies don't send their people for training. A lot of companies don't help their teams to synergize and to work more efficiently together. But that is what develop team is all about. Manage team is pretty much a leadership job. It's about leading and guiding the team. And managed communications is about communicating with stakeholders and sending out reports and memos and things such as that. The next one is implement risk responses. And by now you've got your risk response, you carry it out, right? You avoid the maniac speeding on the freeway. You just implemented your risk response. You swerved out of the way. Thank goodness you didn't roll over. You successfully implemented the risk response. It's that simple. We do these things every day. Conduct procurements is where you select a seller through a formal process. Again, something we do every day or every week or every year. You hire someone to mow the lawn, or you hire someone to put that pool in the backyard. Well, what you did, you just conducted procurements. You awarded a contract, you selected a seller. It's that simple. Managed stakeholder engagement is managing our stakeholders' engagement, making sure that we carry out the plan to keep them engaged, whether it's a water cooler conversation, whether it's a meeting, whether it's sending out a memo to capture the engagement. You're managing the engagement. Let's talk about monitoring and controlling. What should be monitored and controlled on a project? Everything, the schedule, the cost, the scope, the quality, the communications, the risk, the procurement, stakeholder management, everything should be monitored and many things controlled. When we talk about monitoring and controlling, we talk about constraints that could impact the project. Limitations or restrictions need to be considered. The triple constraint of schedule, cost, and scope, that is a traditional triple constraint. It does need to be obeyed and watched on the project, whether you are on a predictive or agile project with an upside down triangle where schedule and cost are fixed instead. You want to make sure you're taking note of all of these. So in the traditional triple constraint, we fix scope, but when we take a look at the agile mindset, it's really the schedule and the costs that are fixed, and whatever we can throw into that time box for that cost, we do. Let's talk about the very first one here. It's monitor and control project work. And this is where we are monitoring and controlling the entire project. We are reporting out what is happening. So work performance reports are derived from here. Performing integrated change control. This is where we put change requests in as an input. Make sure these change requests are carried out if they are supposed to be carried out eventually, or we make sure that these change requests have some review of some sort and may end up not being accepted or not being approved. In other words, we have something rejected, a rejected change request. Well, whatever the case, whether a change request is rejected or approved, we want to document this, put it in a change log, and have a method for dealing with these change requests. So we review, we approve, or reject, or maybe put on hold or pending status these change requests. It really depends. Another thing that happens on projects is the customer approves, accepts a deliverable, perhaps, and that happens in validate scope. Another thing that happens is we control scope as project managers. We prevent extras from being added without the proper change control. We also have control schedule, preventing delays and analyzing the impact of changes to the schedule. We have one that we call control cost, and this is where we prevent cost overruns. We have one we call control quality. Control quality is where we take a look at the product. There's a difference between quality assurance and quality control. So really quick, prevention, we look at that as quality assurance or managed quality, if you will. Quality control, keeping errors out of the customer's reach. That is where we inspect and we make sure that if there are errors in a product, they do not get to the customer without being rectified. It's called control quality. Pretty straightforward. Next one is control resources, monitoring physical resource availability and use of those resources. And we're talking about physical resources, not human, physical. And then we take any corrective action. We have one we call monitor communications, where we modify any communication plan aspects that are not working. Monitor risks is where we monitor our risk register. We monitor these risks, and if there are any changes to the risks, we need to update them. We're also keeping track of the risks and implementing, making sure that we have implemented those risk response plans. This is a tricky one because in the past, we would use this as a catch-all for everything that happens after planning. But now this is pretty much for monitoring, keeping track of risks and making sure that those response plans actually did work. Control procurement is changing any ineffective plan aspects, making sure that the seller is performing as promised. And last but not least, in monitoring and controlling, we have monitor stakeholder engagement. It's checking the plan for how to manage stakeholders' engagement. Don't forget the word engagement. Very important. We do not control or monitor our stakeholders, but it's monitoring the engagement. Last but not least, we're talking about the closing process group, and there's only one here. It's close project or phase. It's closing out a project or phasing a project. And this is where we collate the lessons learned. We put that into a final repository called the Lessons Learned Repository, and we get organizational process assets update. So my friends, if you're getting ready for this exam and you feel stuck, I want to encourage you, go on down to Praizion.com, check out the courses that we have. We have a course starting on Saturday. This Saturday. You can find out Praizion.com or just go on down to projectmanagementmasterclass.com. If all of this sounds like something that you want to do, you might want to take the exam, why don't you come study with us? Just do it, do it. Because this exam, I'm telling you, if you take a look at the websites, the job portals, and I'm going to show you a few of them just to underscore what I'm talking about, because I know some of you are new to this and you're like, well, how do I know that project management is really in demand, or what PMI say they are testing us on is really in demand? It is in demand. So why don't you just type in PMP? Type in PMP into like monster.com, a top job site for searching for jobs, which I have used personally, and I can tell you Monster does work. But if you take a look, there you go, PMP, nope, that's not what I'm looking for. PMP project manager with early learning and education childcare experience. Isn't that interesting? In childcare, PMP? PMP project manager, believe it or not. Yeah, there we go. There's another one, junior project manager. I mean, it's all over the place. People are looking for PMPs by the dozen. Okay. Someone might say, but what about the other one, the CAPM? Well, there are some CAPM jobs, as I've shown on this channel in the past. You just need to be vigilant to find them. But there are a number of CAPM jobs now. Definitely not a dog groomer. No, not that. Definitely not those. But trust me, there are CAPM jobs. You just need to keep your eye out for them. That is funny. Dog groomer jobs. No, that's not the CAPM we're talking about. If you go to other websites like dice.com for quick search, you find the same thing. There are a lot of jobs available for project managers, And the jobs that are available, majority of these jobs, my friends, they're looking for people that have certifications. It is almost as though there is very little chance for those that do not have a certification. And I'm telling you, this has been going on for decades. Let's type in PMP here in DICE just to show you what is out there and why you should consider getting PMP certified. There we go. Senior Project Manager, PMP, PMP Project Manager with Early Learn. That's the same one we just saw a few moments ago. PMP certified candidates. You see, a lot of project manager jobs, you don't even get them if you're not a PMP or, somewhat certified. Project manager, let's take a look. There you go. See, project manager. And I can guarantee you, as you search in these, you're probably going to find majority of them, they're looking for some sort of PMP. Let's click on this one and just take a quick look at it and see what they're looking for. I'd be surprised if they didn't list some sort of certification. All right, professional project management experience. Well, without spelling out PMP, that has PMP all over it. That will definitely get you in the door a lot quicker, even though they're not mentioning it. Some firms may not mention PMP, but the moment you get in there, they're asking you for it, and it's a rude shock, because these days people assume that you've got a certification for whatever you're applying for. I mean, certification seems to be the order of the day. So there seem to be a few out there that may not have a PMP on them, and it is interesting to see that. But majority of the project manager jobs that exist, those that are PMPs, those that are certified, they have that competitive edge over those who don't. Let's take a look at one more for good measure. Project manager. And yep, we don't have any labels on this one. But I guarantee you, there are very few jobs these days that it's not expected that you have some sort of project management certification in addition to your knowledge and aptitude. Do you have any questions for me before I jump off today's call? Questions, concerns, comments? Always welcome. If you have any, please drop them below. Our friend from Vegas in the building. Well, very good. Thank you very much. Good to see you. Who else has any comments or questions? I'm here to help you if you got any about the PMP exam, about project management, about CAPM, about Agile. We really didn't cover much of Agile. Yeah, someone says we didn't cover much of Agile. All right, let me give you a very quick run through of how I want you to be thinking from an Agile perspective. Really super quick. I will not take much time to go over this with you. So we talked about project management, and we said it could be very predictive, but yes, it could also be very agile, not just plan-driven, but also change-driven. So we're going to cover just a tiny little bit of the change-driven mindset. And someone says, why would I even want a project management approach that is called change-driven? Well, the reason is a lot of times in new technology space, being predictive is not good enough. Being predictive, being calculated and rigid in how you approach a project is not going to get you very far when the technology is changing rapidly. As you can see here, this is something we call the Stacy complexity model. And taking a look at the Stacy complexity model, we can see when a project is very simple and where the technical certainty is almost 100. You're so sure about what technology you're going to use. You're so sure about the requirements. We have something like this. So this is close to agreement on requirements, and this is close to agreement on the technicalities of the project. When you are really close to certainty like that, it makes sense to use a predictive approach. Simple space. Plan out everything. Why wouldn't you? The requirements are close to agreement. The technicalities of the project are close to certainty. It would be foolish not to plan everything out. Now, as you move through the passage of certainties to far from certainty, you are beginning to venture into territory where being predictive is not good enough. Being predictive, by the time you leave the simple zone and you begin to approach the complex zone, or you begin to approach the anarchy zone or the chaos zone. You got to change your plan because your plan isn't going to work. There's a quote from Mike Tyson, believe it or not. Yes, I could quote Mike Tyson in an Agile training. Mike says, everyone has a plan until they're punched in the mouth. You're punched in the mouth, your plan goes out of the window. You're then moving into Agile territory. And to be quite honest, on a lot of projects, it's like being daily punched in the mouth. You're moving away from simple into complex and even worse case, anarchy. But the good news is Agile is best when there's high variability, when there's a need to experiment to discover the best solution, when change is likely. This is why Agile is important. Waterfall, on the other side, is best when the requirements are well understood, when they are close to certainty. When your requirements are close to certainty and when there's little chance of change, you're going to be predictive all day. And that's why I often say to people, it's foolish to imagine a world without predictive project management. And it's equally foolish to imagine a world without agile project management. So when you take a look at this publication from the PMI, it's called the Agile Practice Guide. What they show you in the Agile Practice Guide is a continuum of life cycles. And what they're trying to show you here is, depending on the nature of your project, if it is highly predictive, in other words, you have a low degree of change and you have a low frequency of delivery, use predictive methods. However, if you have a low frequency of delivery, but there's a high degree of change, you might want to use an iterative approach. Now, if you have a high frequency of delivery and a low degree of change, maybe consider incremental. So think about it like this. There are some projects where we have things changing very rapidly, but the frequency of delivery is very low. Why wouldn't you think about doing things in iterations? If not, you're losing out. And when you have a project that has a high frequency of delivery, but a very low degree of change, why don't you think of doing things in an incremental fashion? And lastly, if you've got projects that are both a high frequency of delivery and a high degree of change, well, PMI is just showing you here, why wouldn't you think of Agile? Because this is where you're best suited to deal with projects with a high frequency of delivery, high degree of change. It only makes sense. Why don't you do it? So I see a lot of companies going back and forth. Agile is best, predictive is best. It's foolishness. You got to be hybridized. And that's why I subscribe to any company thinking about working projects. You got to be hybrid in your thinking. You got to be hybrid. Because at the end of the day, you could very well be working on an agile development followed by a predictive rollout, or you could have what I call an agile predictive sub, where you got agile and predictive sandwiched. Why wouldn't you combine them if it's the best thing to do? Doing that in and of itself is actually agile, believe it or not. What about an agile approach with a largely agile approach with a tiny little predictive component, or a largely predictive approach with a tiny little agile component? These are some of the mindsets that PMI is asking people to consider. Ain't nothing wrong in that. And this is why on the PMP exam, you have the breakout of people, process, business, but sliced in agile and hybrid and also predictive. All right. I hope this helps you, those of you that wanted to know a little bit more about Agile. But like I said, best thing to do, head on down to our website. It's called Praizion.com, Praizion.com, right? If you really mean business in your journey, you need to come along for the ride. My buddies and we get you there, okay? Whether you're learning fully Agile stuff, whether you're learning predictive stuff, whether you're learning, the hybrid methods, we can help you. Okay, I hope this gives you some encouragement and some direction, but I want you to take a step. Those of you who are on the sidelines saying, I want to be a PM, I want to be a PM, make a move. Go to PMI's website, take that kickoff thing I showed you, sign up for the CAPM training, all right? Get CAPM certified, come for the ride with us. You got any questions, ask them, go to Praizion.com, but the sky's the limit. You want to be a great PM? Yes, you can. Just start. Remember, you gotta make a move. Some of you have decided long ago to get certified. I'm here looking at the time. I'm waiting for you to make a move. All right, make a move. Do it right now. All right, go on down to the website. It's Praizion.com. We've got a class starting this weekend. This weekend. Why wouldn't you sign up for it? 22nd of May. You could. Or maybe in the future. Just go on down, check out our next course. And if it's not this one, it'll be another. But join, come along for the ride. Come with people who know what they're doing, people who will give you the time of the day and treat you with respect. All right? Thank you very much. Are there any questions before we close? Questions, going once, going twice. We had our friend Greta says, hello, how you doing, Greta? Greta says, for the PMP exam in situational questions, when is it appropriate to bring in the sponsor? It really depends. It really depends. Now, let me just say this, Greta. On the PMP exam, you got to think like a boss. Now, I don't mean someone beating people over the head with a stick. But I mean, you got to think like a PM in a strong matrix organization, or even better still, a project-oriented organization. Now ask yourself the question, in a project-oriented organization, don't I have the authority to do a lot of stuff? Yes, you do. In fact, it is said the project manager has high to almost total authority on projects. So why would you go to the sponsor if you can handle it yourself? So the project manager is expected to make decisions. The project manager is expected to make decisions about anything, final decisions about anything that does not affect the baselines, scope, schedule, and cost. So if things are not affecting those baselines and they're not configurable items, why wouldn't you decide on them? Now, if something is going to affect one of the baselines, then it would make sense. It would be prudent to get the next approving authority involved, and that could be the sponsor, could be a change control board, but it would make sense to get them involved. So the short answer is the proverbial, it depends. It depends on a lot, Greta. It depends. It depends on the scenario painted on the exam. It also depends on the kind of project. So these days, the PMI, when they give you a question on the exam, they will say, on an Agile project. Oh, it's an Agile project. Well, if it's an Agile project, we know we have a self-organizing team, a self-led team, a self-managed team. Then what the PM does in such circumstances will be different, be limited. Better still, if it's a Scrum endeavor, and you know it's Scrum because they talk about the product owner and the product backlog, or just any backlog, then again, you gotta tread carefully and don't answer the question the same way. All right. And that's why my answer is it really depends. However, if you are on a predictive project, just make sure you understand the landscape from the question, but don't hesitate. Don't hesitate to use your decision-making power, project manager. I know a lot of PMs are hesitant to make decisions in the real world, but on the exam, PMI will test that. And if you're not able to make decisions, it could affect success in a question. So don't be afraid to use your project manager authorities, right? Formal power is what we call it. All right, thank you all very much for joining me. I wish you folks all the very best. I absolutely know you can do it. I'm not joking. I know you can pass this exam. Like my mentor, she said, Phil, that was back in 05. She said, Phil, here are my books. Here's my PMBOK guide. Here's all that I used to pass the exam. I know you can do it. Someone believed in me. I believe in you. I believe you can do it. But you got to take that step. And that first step is getting trained, getting mentored, getting coached, and at the same time, fixing an exam date. I want to speak to some of you that have not done it. Why haven't you fixed your exam date? Do you think you will ever get certified if you don't fix a date? Get real. Get real. You just decided to take the exam, but you didn't act. I want you to act on it. Fix that date and do it. I also want to give a shout out to our recent PMP gurus. So some of our recent gurus, Bruce got certified, the leader got certified, Jim got certified. Many of you have gotten certified on our watch. And my buddy Roy and I, we're extremely proud. We at Praizion, extremely proud of you. Well done. We're looking at you getting to the next level. So go, go, go. Don't relent. And if you have questions, this is a website you need to go to. We look forward to hearing from you, my friends. You take care. Keep on trucking.